Thank you for watching. My name's Glenn Morgan, and this is We the Governed. And today in the studio, we have kind of a special treat for the audience, and I'm hoping that that you'll enjoy this as much as I'm planning to. And that is, we have in the studio with me is Brian Heywood, the guy who's actually funded and launched this entire initiative project, which I know I've spoken about endlessly to any of my viewers. You can't have watched my channel in the last number of months and not heard something about it. And so I feel very fortunate we have in the audience today Brian Heywood. Brian, thank you so much for being in here and joining us.
Well, thank you for letting me be here, and I appreciate all the work you've done in promoting it and supporting it. I think this is an exciting, something meaningful that we're doing here in the state. I
think so too, and I did a video a little while ago where I kind of walked through all the 11 initiatives, and but if you could just kind of indulge us here and indulge me, and why don't you tell the viewers here all about these 11 initiatives? After all, you've launched the project, it's your name on the top of every one of those signature sheets, and just for their interest, I think they'd be interested in hearing what you have to say about these initiatives.
That's great. There's actually two things I'd like to preface it with, and the first is that we tried to to find things that were meaningful to the average everyday Washingtonian, things that were not supported by some deep pocket special interest group, but things that would impact people in their everyday lives. And so the three categories are, number one, sort of the pocketbook, number two, the public safety, and number three is more of just governance of the state itself, things that impact you in your daily life where the government is involved. And then the second piece on this is that we weren't out to remake Washington. We're not trying to change Washington. There just were some really stupid things that had been done by the legislature over the last while. And because we have this unique system where you can make fixes, we went about tweaking just minor details, sometimes changing back the law to what it was before. But it's not it's not major changes. It's very subtle tweaks to just turn things back and try to fix the things that have been broken over the last 10 years.
And that's the tagline on Let's Go Washington, let's fix what's broken. So let's tell the audience some of the fixes that we have in these initiatives.
Well, and I'll start actually with the public safety. I think the one that got us fired up the most was the Restore Police Pursuit. And it's almost unbelievable that one has to explain this or that we'd have to do something, but when I talk to my friends from other states, they know that things are sort of sometimes crazy in Washington and we can be a little different. But when I tell them about the idea that the police, you could ram into the police cars in front of the police and then get in your car and drive away and they're not allowed to pursue you, that's just beyond crazy. And so all we did, the first initiative is Fit 1474, and that would restore the police ability to pursue criminals. And I think mainly what happened before is they raised the standard so high and they left it vague enough that the police departments were reasonably afraid of stepping over this sort of imaginary line, even though they were assured, oh no, you're taking it too far, you don't need to worry about it. I think the police reasonably thought, we have no idea where the line is, and we'd better be err on the side of safety than to cross over it, and especially with all the things that happened with the defund the police movement. So the completely foreseeable result has been criminals figuring out very quickly that they can take advantage of this, and I think people's lives, people's property, all of these things are put in jeopardy by the fact that the police can't reasonably pursue suspects.
And I know you're holding one of these cards, and you should hold it up for the audience, because in my opinion, this is like the perfect marketing tool of how to explain what these initiatives are. Because I know when I've handed these cards out to people, as soon as they see them, they start to read them, it all clicks, and the average person sees that and says, yeah, who wouldn't support these? And that's why when you're in public, all I have to do is get in front of people, and they will sign these initiatives. So talk about some of the other public safety ones that are here.
Well, and I think you just brought up a really important point. This is not some sort of partisan effort. This was really common sense. I mean, if you go through these, so maybe what I'll do is I'll read all of them and then I'll talk about each of them individually as we've got time.
Sure.
The second one is 1510, which is make hard drugs illegal again. We'll go into the detail on that. 1512 is to keep guns out of the hands of criminals, or more importantly, to protect the rights of law-abiding citizens, the Second Amendment rights. 1475 is trim the sales tax by 1%. Then 1508 cut the gas tax by the state gas tax by 24.7 cents, which is cutting it in half. 1509 is to make a $250,000 exemption on the property value for property taxes, for state property taxes. And followed by 1491, which is to repeal the capital gains tax. And that's in the courts right now, and that's going to be increasingly topical coming up here in the new year. 1480, this may seem meaningless now that after 977 days the governor finally relinquished his power, but the Emergency Powers Review that looks at how much, well, just reviewing the governor's ability to use emergency power.
Restrain it a little bit.
Restrain it.
Yeah.
But even just to review it, there was no review process whatsoever. So, and then curriculum transparency seems like a fairly obvious one, but it's fairly simple just to make, if it's taught in the classroom, it needs to be online. And this is a digital age where that's not an impossible or unreasonable ask. And I think COVID really highlighted this one. And then the last two are electoral college allocation, dealing with that, and we'll go into detail what that means. And then the final one is what we call the Voter Protection Act. And this is really about restoring, and today is being election day, it's really hoping to restore confidence that people have in the electoral college process, because that's critical for everybody, for both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, the elections, kind of restoring this audit function to it.
Exactly.
Which I'm a big fan of that one too. I think that's just a real common sense one, and anybody, it's very bipartisan, so anybody should support that one.
That one, to me, it resonates a lot today, because as I've gone around the state and I've talked to people, one of the things that I hear often is, my vote doesn't matter, and they're just going to steal it, and there's this fear that democracy is broken, that our republic is broken, and that's sort of irreparably broken, so that my participation doesn't matter. And that's deadly. I think that kind of thinking is deadly, and it's not helpful. And the nature of this is to, after every single election in every single county, there would be an automatic audit by a third party. And it would take 3 races or ballot measures as decided by the 2 major parties. So they would get together, they would come up with, here's the 3 races we want to look at and audit. If they couldn't agree on the 3, then the audit committee, the outside auditor would play a role in choosing the 3. And then again, each of the parties would say, well, here's the 6 precincts that we would like to audit within our county. And I don't claim, nobody claims that this is the magic potion that's going to make it all perfect. But what this should do is, number one, create an audit process. So there's a regular audit process. Number 2, it's a hand recount, right, with proper observation. And we believe that should, if there is cheating going on, it should make it more difficult for cheating to go on. If there's not the kind of cheating going on that some people believe, then it will also make it more clear and transparent that it's not there, because we're able to look at these different places. So I believe it's a good down payment and a good first step to bringing trust back into our elections and the voting system.
And I always like this one, because one of the things I think is it also allows the auditors to demonstrate that, hey, we actually can audit.
Yes.
We bring auditing back to the auditor's office.
Right.
And once they've done this a little bit in a relatively small sampling method, they'll realize that there's nothing to fear here, right? This is something we can do in a bigger scale in the future, or, the more transparency in elections I think you have, the better off we all are.
And again, this is not a Republican or a Democrat issue. This is an American and a Washingtonian believing in your voting system issue.
Right.
And both sides, I think, should support this enormously. This is designed to make sure that both sides feel comfortable of the way the voting process works.
And I think, I guess jumping around again here, you have the 4 pocketbook sort of issues, which in all surveys are showing inflation and cost of living clearly affects everybody. You want to maybe discuss some of those, because I think those are the easiest to understand too when we're out there talking to people.
Well, so the sales tax is the first one let's talk about, and it's simply to cut the state sales tax from 6.5% down to 5.5%. And this bill was actually promoted and supported by Mona Das, who is in the Democrat Party in the legislature. And she proposed it and then ended up not, it wasn't ever really given a hearing on the floor, and she ended up not running again. But this is a bipartisan bill. The Democrats supported this, and I think this hits people every day, right? With COVID and then the resultant supply chain mess and then the inflation that's just gone through the roof this year. It seems like one of the simplest things for us to do is to cut the sales tax by at least 1%. I personally would like to see it at 2%, but 1% is a good down payment. And the question that's going to come up on this is, well, what about the budget? Won't this hurt the budget? Won't this? Because last year we had a $17 billion surplus over and beyond what we had already budgeted and spent, and somehow we magically made that $17 billion just disappear. And I think that the only way that you get discipline in your government is when you get those surpluses, you should have I think there's some rainy day fund that you should have, but also I think that giving the money back to the people that are paying it is a reasonable thing to ask. And 1% is more than reasonable cut in the tax.
Now with gas prices the way they are, the next one, the gas tax cut, is probably the most popular of all these.
Yeah, especially every time you fill up the gas, you just go, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was supposed to have 3 digits there when I fill up. And more importantly, in a way, is that there's some more broken things that are coming down the pipeline. The legislature passed several bills that I believe will have an impact. We've seen estimates of anywhere from 42 cents to well over $1 per gallon at the pump starting in January.
The low carbon fuel standard and all that.
Correct. And that's going to hit people. I mean, that'll take us, really, Washington will be number one. We'll have the most expensive gas in the entire nation. And this is an attempt to slow what was already in place. Let's cut it in half. And then again, this is another one that the question often is raised about, okay, well, what does that mean? Does that mean now our roads are going to go down because of this? And I think there's just 2 important points on understanding the gas tax cut. The first is the way that our budget is allocated. We have about roughly an $8 billion budget in state for our transportation, of which gas taxes make up about $2 billion. And what was supposed to happen is that all the money from gas taxes was supposed to go to fix our roads, plus whatever else was needed. And we probably need, I don't know, $3 or $4 billion to fix our roads, to keep them on a steady path. And of course, 90+% of the drives and rides and transportation happens on our roads. But our budget allocates only about 25% of it to the roads, and it actually became a cap on how much was spent on the roads rather than a base number. And so one is we have money in the budget that can be spent on roads. And in fact, on top of that, we have another $9 billion that comes in from the federal government that, again, is not spent on our roads. It goes to all kinds of projects like free transportation for druggies that have stolen all the Seattle goods and are moving out to Redmond.
Or bike lanes, or mitigation schemes.
And I think there's plenty of interesting things that can be done in the state that make it easier to live in and easier to get around. But we really should be focusing on our roads because that's where the bulk of our traffic has been and will be for the foreseeable future. And the second piece, though, is that as a backfill of anything that might come out of that, in the sales tax, there's currently already a car sales tax that just goes into the general fund. And this would allocate that car sales tax over to backfill for the gas tax. And that keeps the number level. And I think the other interesting thing is that with the proposed mandates to get rid of gasoline fueled vehicles, where's the gas tax money going to come from? And so this would be a beginning of a transition process already to bring some of the car sales tax. So even on the EVs, the very expensive average everyday workers can't afford EVs. Those sales taxes would come back over and backfill into this roads fund.
Yeah, and I guess I know I've described it where I just said even if you take out half, you could actually double what you currently spend on roads and bridges and cut the gas tax in half and still have plenty to waste on all kinds of unfortunate ideas.
Again, we have, interestingly, almost $17 billion just in this area alone that we use, and we only spend $2 billion of it on roads.
Right, which is not a good thing.
That is way out of proportion.
Right. Well, and I think people appreciate saving the money, and of course that's the whole point with all four of those pocketbook sort of keep your cost of living lower initiatives that we have there. All right, we're having such a great conversation here. I want our audience to be able to hear everything that you have to say on this subject. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to break this into 2 videos. Stay tuned for part 2. If you're interested in this subject, and I'm sure you are, then watch the second part of the video for the rest of this discussion.